2017 is almost over, and
we thought that it would be a good idea to kind of wrap up our first podcast season.
Yes.
Just to revisit people that we talked to, that we had the privilege of talking to, and the main ideas that we really got to cover over the last 8 or 9 speakers that we've had conversations with, and talk about where we're going next, hopefully.
Yeah, I think it was a great start, and hopefully we're gonna improve, and we're gonna have more speakers, external and internal. So hope you enjoy the listen.
Yeah, I was listening back to a couple of the sessions. Yeah, the sessions that we had. I listened to the one that we did first. I guess the first one was Mary Williams talking about social media and science communications, things like that. She gave her presentation on that same topic, which I think was a good start to the whole series because it really highlights the reasons why we're doing the podcast in the first place. You know, that it's important for new scientists, but probably anyone who's kind of thinking about their career path to understand the potential outlets you have and different tools that you can use and how to move through the progress of whatever your career is kind of facing up towards or where you are in the present moment of your career.
You mean the use of social media?
Yeah.
And not only for students or early career scientists, but even for established people. It's like this is how people are communicating their papers, their grants, like their successes.
It has been, I think, with all of the people we've talked to. For the most part, we always ask about their Twitter handle or how they present their work or get their work out, and it does seem to be balance between people who have really embraced social media and those who still feel like it's a bit foreign to them.
But that's reasonable, right?
Yeah.
It's very new, at least in terms of science communication. I mean, even from our colleagues or our lab mates, how many people are using, let's say, Twitter for communicating or networking or even doing the journal club. That's me and you, we have discussed a lot that we are using Twitter for journal club. Basically, it's our personalized journal club.
Yeah, well, and Wendy Bickmore also really brings that up at the end of our conversation with her, is to ask about social media and that she had a Twitter account. And I think that she confessed that she didn't feel like she was really using it to its full potential, but that one of the things that she does use it for extensively is to keep up on the literature because there's just so many journals now. How do you possibly read all of them? It may have been just a thread on Twitter of someone posing the question of when you do most of your reading or how you make time. And there were a lot of people who said that they do most of their reading when they're writing their own papers. Because to either do the assessment of their own work or to write the introduction is when they found that they really knew the literature the most, and that's when they did most of the reading. But finding time within your regular work schedule to read is impossible for some people. I find it somewhat intimidating to try to carve out some time to just look at your computer and figure it out. So I think Twitter, in a way, and kind of like what Wendy, I do the same thing that Wendy does, is in the morning over your first cup of coffee, you just kind of scan through and see what's out there. And it is really a great way, I think, for readers to keep up on the most new things coming out, but also for people to promote their work too.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Better than, I think, getting the content sometimes from your email.
Yes, because how many...
Get buried.
Yes, and how many channels can you have on your email? I mean, you can have a lot, but then I'm sure that you don't even open this email. As soon as you see the contents of the X journal, it's like, okay, I'll do it later, and then this is buried somewhere.
Yeah.
While on Twitter, first of all, you can have different channels appearing, not even necessarily related to your field. For example, we are plant scientists, but I have journals that are not directly.
Yeah, I agree. I do the same, and you can create those separate feeds that kind of sort your tweets too.
But even like for example, for students or for early career scientists, finding a job is also is a way through Twitter or similar media. We just mainly we talk about Twitter because we are using more Twitter, me and you, but you have these hashtags, PhD or postdoc jobs or whatever. So it's a good and it's a good tool. And I think coming back to Mary Williams, she really highlighted and she really shows the potential. And
I think some of the drawbacks too, in a way. One of the other conversations I refamiliarized myself was with Rory Duncan, and he really talks a lot about the different cultures within scientific fields, but also kind of the ways we communicate across those fields. And I do think that social media can help with that because, like you said, you can follow lots of different people relatively little effort on your side of things, but you can kind of build these communities and you have more direct contact with individuals that you would maybe otherwise never ever have, either because you go to different conferences or you think this person is kind of high up the food chain, whereas you're farther down. And I would say that in my experience, it's always been a positive experience. Either communicate, instead of emailing someone who's going to get 1 million emails in one day and maybe they don't know who you are, so you might get stuck in a different inbox, but you tweet at somebody and they almost always get back to you pretty quickly. So I'm really excited about how the growing media environments can change the way scientists communicate. And Rory also talked about the importance of scientists having an opinion and having a contact with the public.
Yeah.
But, there is a responsibility for scientists to not only communicate with their colleagues, their professional colleagues, but also with the people who are ostensibly paying your grant money, and that it's important for scientists to be able to talk to the public, the general public, about what is at stake when we hear about changing policies or educational requirements for primary and secondary schools, or what happens when universities change their immigration policies and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's nice also try to somehow communicate your paper or your achievement, but let's talk about papers, for the general public. It's not easy. We forget that, we write for scientific journals, but there are blogs or there are outlets where you can put your research, your findings, and be accessible to the regular people that don't have any scientific background, or even if they have, maybe they are from another field. Basically engaging with the public.
And Twitter can definitely be that. I mean, if you have a non-scientist following you, but you tweet out about things that you're doing, or you share other important things that are happening within science, that gets
or other sources, like for example, we have seen a lot on our Facebook and Twitter. Again, we advertised a lot about what Matt Dalby did on his group, and they have been in the BBC radio, in channels. And if you are keen on engaging with the public, you can definitely find a lot of options. And sometimes it can be funny options. For example, we did, it was back in the summer, but we did our public engagement as plant scientists, and we did lots of funny activities. that were destined to be for kids up to elderly people. So I'm sure that if we spend time, we can be more creative and showcase our studies.
I think we have to sometimes take a step back from all of the professional and specialized activities that we do on our own that we think are important for our impact or our jobs or our research, and remind ourselves about the real reasons why we do them. That those reasons can, of course, be the academic reasons that are very stuffy and important only to us, but I think if we really truly ask us why we're interested in those particular things, it comes down to pretty fundamental ideas about problem solving or creativity or
and from this point, going back to the podcast we did with Alison Lloyd, and where basically it was a nice discussion. We were discussing about the balance between being creative, but also that the urge that you have to find a job, especially for early career scientists, that you have to keep up with your citations or with your publications and so on. So, I mean, it's not easy, and I think sometimes people tend to get away from their creative side because they feel the pressure that I have only 1 year left or 2 years left and I have to publish in order to go for the next step. And so
we talked a lot about job stability and job security with her, and kind of the conflict between the stability that tenured advanced faculty and research scientists have versus the young or younger scientists that they employ, and the instability of graduate and postdoc positions generally, and that's just kind of the nature of the beast, really. But I really liked what she had to say about trying to encourage your students to be creative in whatever way that means. And one of the things that I remember her talking about was part of that creativity is also knowing when your experiment isn't working anymore and then you just need to stop doing it. This idea that you just have to kind of muscle through whatever problem and see it through even if your experiment is failing, instead of saying, no, we're not doing this anymore. And I'm in a current experiment where I feel like I'm on the brink of trying to decide if I just complete it because I've only got maybe a couple of weeks left versus saying, this isn't going anywhere. And I was remembering back to our conversation with Allison and her saying, know when the game is up.
To support you on that, I just stopped my experiment. It doesn't work. So it was like 4 weeks treatment and I decided, no. I have to think again about my condition. So sometimes, although it is easy, I have to wait for 2 more weeks easily. Also, when Christmas are coming, so it's like 2 weeks of what I can do. But then I was like, no, it's a waste of space, energy,
resources.
So
brain space. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
But speaking of creativity and how to encourage your postdocs or your students, for example, we have a very nice discussion and we saw a very creative project in our institute with the IGEM. I really like how the students thought about their project and how to progress from looking on their policies up to the engineering and the biological tools.
Talk about a good use of disciplinary collaboration.
That
was an excellent example. And I have to say I was particularly impressed at the idea they came up with, the execution of that idea, and the interpretation of where that idea was going to go from undergrads.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought that they're a wonderful example of what I think the young generation of scientists are going to be. It was very heartwarming.
But also that there are people that are already established in the university, but they are willing to give their time to help these students to accomplish their creative ideas. So
mentorship is a big part.
Yeah.
A big part of that. And we talked with Sophie Bradley from the University of Glasgow, who sits Early Career Researchers Committee, about their advocacy for mentorship programs for young or new early career researchers, which is kind of up and running now, and maybe we should talk with her again about that. But she herself had kind of a nice personal story about her postdoc turning into a fellowship, but that she is still working under her old advisor here at the university when he moved. I think he moved here, right?
Sandra Tobin.
Yes. But that was a really nice, that is another really nice example, kind of at a more advanced level, of how your mentors can really help shape your career opportunities, as you kind of try to move into your own space.
I have my personal experience because I registered for this scheme, and it's very nice to talk with people that are outside of your field. So I'm a plant scientist, and I spoke with Brian Hudson that he is working on translational biology. But again, he's an early career scientist. Well, he has already a fellowship, so he knows what it takes to apply for fellowships, or even sometimes there is this balance that you have to find between your supervisor and your needs. That is not easy. The priorities for each person are different, so it's good to have somebody that is outside of your field, of your lab. It's another opinion. It doesn't mean that some people don't find this useful. Some people will find this useful. For example, again, Alison Lloyd, she was highlighting that she felt that she had a better advice from people that she was interested in.
Yeah.
And of course, this is everybody's doing that, right?
Yeah.
But again, it's good to see that, at least my opinion or my experience is that after me talking with Brian, it was quite helpful, and reassuring of the steps that I have to take.
I had initially thought that, of course, you would want a mentor kind of within your field, because they would be able to give you advice on the opportunities that are available or whatever. But now that you're saying this, I hadn't really kind of thought about the usefulness of having someone who's less biased about your particular situation. That you can have a mentor who is maybe your PhD or postdoc advisor, or maybe a collaborative but senior scientist that you work with. You can ask questions about how to navigate your particular situation, and they may have some specific opinions about those decisions for you. But certainly they're somewhat tied to you and to the field in a different way that creates their own attitudes about that someone outside of your field, but still within maybe cell biology or something, wouldn't necessarily have. So they're not going to push you towards something in one way or another, potentially within your specialized area. And I think Mary Williams talked about the importance of having multiple kinds of mentors. That you can have your kind of professional mentor, but having a kind of emotional mentor, or someone who helps you navigate a new community that you're in. Carla Kohler talked about doing her postdoc. She did her PhD. She's originally from the U.S. and she did her postdoc in Switzerland. And she talked about trying to make that transition not only into a new scientific community, but into a very different cultural society that is not your own. And kind of developing relationships inside and outside of the lab, in a place that's very different from the place that you're normally used to.
And Carla talked a lot about having. She is a cyclist, so she really talked about how to not balance her work life, because you don't like this term.
That's
But this good that, you see people that are, again, successful on their profession, but they have actual hobbies and or other interests. And also Silke
Yes.
was talking about that as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, she was a gymnast.
Silke Robotczyk.
Yeah, Robotczyk. Yeah, gymnast. She was a gymnast and then also now trains.
Yeah, and she's part of several committees deciding for
like Olympic stuff,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, and coming back to our first conversation with Wendy Bickmore, I believe she's a gardener.
Yes.
And she also does drawing, I think, like naturalistic drawings. Yeah, that's something that I personally still very much struggle with, is finding something to do outside.
I agree. I always postpone my gym class for next Monday.
Yeah.
And I'm doing that for almost a year now, so...
or I have to take up some sort of a hobby, or have to start doing hill walking or something. I don't know.
Come on, hill walking. No, it can't be having. No. It's too much.
It can't just be going home and reading scientific nonfiction or something. I think that there's got to be something else. Or I always say, it's I like making dinner. It's like everybody makes dinner. Everybody
Oh well, but still, it's whatever pleases you and whatever makes you feel less stressed, or basically you kind of blank your brain. This is what, I guess doing a sort of exercise apart from distressing yourself is also that you keep fit.
Yes.
But if you cannot do both, at least do one.
Yeah, so, it's maybe
you
not.
See, again, I found excuses. That's the problem.
I think it's not just about finding space separate from science to give yourself a quote unquote break from science. But I think it's also finding space that allows you to maybe get a different perspective on the stuff that you're working on, because you're not directly thinking about it.
Yeah.
That if you're doing some other sort of task, maybe it is running, maybe it is gardening, maybe it's painting, maybe it's whatever. It's something that's taking your mind off of your everyday, but I think your everyday is always still kind of right behind it. And I know that sometimes, like, the more interesting solutions to problems that I've been struggling with come at times when I'm not thinking about science. It's like in the shower, you're like washing your hair or something, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I know what experiment I need to do.
For me, it's during my dreams, and then I wake up and I forget what I have thought about it. That probably is not gonna work, but
you never know. But I think sometimes it's taking a walk in the park. Knitting. Janie Hart is a big knitter, and I've also been a knitter, but I think that there is something to be said for this type of activity that is not too exhausting. That can actually give you a little more brain space for thinking about your work. So
I have to say that this podcast series has somehow filled this part of getting away from your actual experiments, but still doing something new and interesting and learning, because we learn a lot, I think.
By
talking to other people, and
it's also really it's been very informative with respect to gaining perspective on things that are kind of too hard to deal with right now. Being able to talk about improving your impact, being able to talk about how to approach publishing as a new corresponding author or peer reviewer. How can you better utilize social media and mentorships? How do you deal with gender equality? That's something that we talk a lot about. I think, one, because you and I are women, but also because we've spoken to a lot of women in science and how things have kind of changed through the generations with that. I I think all of that has been really, really helpful and informative in a way that has helped me kind of start thinking in different directions or changing my patterns of thinking on stuff that sometimes felt overly difficult to deal with.
Yeah, and not only gender equality, but also Mary Williams talk about promoting diversity, whatever that means, like either gender, race, religion, because we think about women, men imbalance, but there are still aspects that we don't discuss.
Yeah.
And Mary highlighted that.
Yeah, Wendy also talked about taking an account of being inclusive.
Exactly.
Not just because of gender, but of cultural differences or how people's family lives are put together. Not just kids, but do you have partners or parents that need assistance or friends, that you help out on a regular basis or that you're a resource for. I think talking about all of those things will help us communicate with our future students and communities, and also with the public.
And you can see that a good example is to whoever is attending a conference where you see this diversity, and there you can really embrace that.
Yeah, so Mary came back and spoke to us about attending conferences and kind of how to optimize what you can get out of the conferences. And you were telling me that the conference that you went to recently, you tried to enact some of these things.
Yeah, I went to the SCB planned post-translational modification Symposium, and it was very nice because although I didn't present anything, I learned first of all lots of things. So I was kind of a newbie on this field. But also one of the things that Mary mentioned was that you can go and talk to the people that they represent the journal, and in this case it was Journal of Experimental Botany. But yeah, we were discussing about how the publishing sector works, from how he got to get this job being involved in a journal, or how they are dealing with fraud, like with manipulated data. That is a big thing across different fields. Especially, it's very important for medicine. So I think I follow some of her tips. Definitely there.
Yeah. I went to
plus the extra pens. That's it. At least you can say free stuff. So yeah, I got like a pen and a bag. So it was nice.
Yeah, I went to a meeting this summer too, the NPER meeting, which stands for the European Network for Plant Endomembrane Research. That was in Prague in September. And one of the things that I tried to take from Mary's tips was to talk to people at poster sessions who were not getting a lot of traffic. So I spoke to a couple of the most of them were very new students, new graduate students, and they were all very eager to explain their experiments, and actually really good to talk to students whose projects were just starting to get up. So they were showing kind of like their preliminary work and then their scheme for their plans. And so I actually felt very engaged in a poster session in ways that I had not been before, so I tried to do that too, and I think I got a lot out of it. Yeah. I was wondering what you thought, or if you had any thoughts about how we might improve on our podcast.
Having better intro and end, for sure.
Sounding less nervous on mic. Yeah.
To be honest, I like how they are working because they are quite freestyle, and I think what I would like to hear more in the new year, let's make a New Year's resolution for our podcast series, to have more postdocs and PhD students from our institute. Because I think we try to cover most of the external speakers, and we get the most out of them. And we don't necessarily want to learn about or only about their research, because this is something that you can find out, but how they are outside of the lab.
Yeah, in a way, I think some of these, at least for me, I've been able to use this podcast to take advantage of picking the brains of people who are successful. Yeah. And so you almost use them as like a mini mentoring session, you know. Yeah. How did you start your own lab, or how did you go from, you know, one place to another? I know it wasn't direct, so how did you deal with like the ups and downs of your career? When did you feel like you were ready to start your own lab? How big do you think a lab should be? Like, I think all of these questions have been really useful. Well, they're one, interesting, but I think two, they are like hints, I find. Yeah. And I think I would also like to see this be a space where we can advertise and advocate for up and coming researchers as well. Yeah. From our institute, for sure.
No, I agree. At the end of the day, we are a community, so we have to support each other. And this is like a medium where we can support the research that is going on, and anything else that, like, for example, Emily Armstrong, she's responsible. She takes care of the PhD mini-series, so she's a PhD student, so it's interesting to see how the students that are through this process of towards the PhD. So it's interesting to see what they discuss and what are their worries, or how they can, as we said, distress. You know, what are their hobbies, or how it is student life in University of Glasgow, or even in Glasgow for those that are not from here.
Yeah, or might be thinking about where to study abroad.
Yeah.
I think that it would be great to showcase more of the work that happens within our institute or within our school. And I was thinking, when I was listening to Rory Duncan's session, that he talked a lot about the culture, and is particularly in biology, to kind of like ferret away all of your research and not talk about it until you feel like you've created the best possible story. And he keeps saying, you know, it's not healthy. It's not healthy for us. It's not healthy for science for doing that. And he said that a couple of times about the kind of health of the culture, the health of the field. And I really think that this is part of that, you know, of improving our own cultural health with respect to sharing our ideas, sharing the tools that we have, and in general trying to be better at communicating and assisting one another. Because, as you said, at the end of the day, we're a community, and we should be able to rely on each other for support.
Speaking of being supportive to each other, for example, we have our plant symposium where all the different labs, we are 80 labs?
Yeah, just about.
Yeah, so it was all about plant science, and it was nice because the symposium was mainly organized by the early career scientists. So they got the experience, and they did a great job.
Yeah.
To include at least 2 speakers of each lab, and we learn what our colleagues are doing, and actually people that we are on the same building but we haven't seen their research.
I think, what was it, a couple of years ago we used to have kind of the Bauer Building seminar series, but that was kind of absorbed into the Institute seminar series.
That is still, I mean, to me, it was a nice transition, because now we have the opportunity to not only learn about plant science, but expand again. We're going back to having a greater community.
Yeah, I agree. We're a part of an institute, so I think, you know, in the end, We're all cell biologists. We all do molecular-based research, and I get a lot out of seeing how people approach kind of similar problems, but either with different tools or different model systems. And it is amazing how close you can be in proximity, but really not know what's happening in other people's labs. Science can be very internalized, and I think that we tend to internalize our work really well, and having a space to get some feedback on that, and also just to absorb some of that.
A parallel world, if you want, we have this symposium for students, for PhD students that they do every day, where I think it's the second year PhD students, where they present a poster, and that's again a nice opportunity to go and see what is their project, or what is the key research of the labs that constitute our institute. So I think trying to create more such events will enhance our cultural health.
Yeah,
as I said.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can continue our podcast. I think that all of the people we've spoken to have been really engaging, and I think that we've also gotten some pretty good feedback from listeners that they've been enjoyable. So that's good. I hope that more people will maybe listen,
follow,
in the next year. And
so maybe we can say once more our Twitter, the Institute Twitter.
Yeah. So there's several places that we can be reached, or where people can find information, not just on this podcast, but and about you and me, but about the Institute. So the Institute of Molecular Cell and Systems Biology at the University of Glasgow has its own website. We have a Facebook page.
The Twitter handle is at UofGIMCSB. Our podcast is available on YouTube, at SoundCloud and iTunes. And my Twitter is at @m_Papanatsiou. And your Twitter?
My Twitter is at @ERLarson_PhD.
Excellent. And
thanks for listening.